Hello and welcome to episode 105 of Glitch Report. My name is GnittWitt. Thank you so much for stopping by, saying hi, kicking it with me today on the stream. We are live on YouTube today, trying out streaming, live streaming that is, on YouTube. We are not on Twitch today. Not too sure if this will be the new permanent home for Glitch Report or not. As you may or may not know, you can always get the videos on Glitch Report. So the way that this kind of goes is I record the episode live Thursday mornings, assuming I wake up on time, live Thursday mornings, and then the video and audio version of that podcast is up on Friday morning, which means that if you're watching it on Twitch, as previously been live streamed, you could watch it, essentially a day early on Twitch if that was your thing. Decided to maybe try out YouTube streaming instead, see how that goes. I know there's different things, and there's like small changes about YouTube that I had to quickly grasp as I shuffled all this stuff together to come up with a new kind of format and stuff. That it's all like computer stuff. It's not that complicated. So what you hear, what you see, what you experience should not be any different, though I will say that I know people can watch live streams of live streams of YouTube videos after. As of right now, I don't have that stuff set up. So the idea is if you're watching this live right now, fantastic. Thank you if that's your thing. And if you want the video version, that will be coming out later. But after the stream's over, like if you missed it, you missed it for the time being. You can find everything that I do over at my Linktree. That's linktree.com/GnittWitt, GnittWitt, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all of those great things. And I think we got a great show for you today. A good, healthy amount of news about some really unhealthy topics that we will get to in just a moment. Some parts of the gaming industry are doing fantastic, doing great. Others not so much. I've also been playing some games, though a lot of them are older games, although are newer games on the horizon to look forward to and all that stuff. So we'll get to that. But first and foremost, I want to kick off the show talking about Bungie. Halo creator Bungie, which was purchased by PlayStation not that long ago, has had an incredibly rough go at it at PlayStation specifically. They had been experiencing a round of layoffs not that long ago, and they have now come out and said, hey, by the way, Bungie is laying off over 200 people as it forms a new studio within PlayStation. That's about 17% of its staff, 220 people let go. Oh boy. In a letter, this is a letter published on Wednesday, excuse me. The Destiny creator cited rising costs of development and industry shifts for what it called some of its most difficult changes the studio has had to make. In the letter, the company announced two major changes to the structure of the developer going forward. This is by Pete Parsons, the CEO of Bungie, who wrote, "First, we are deepening our integration with Sony Interactive Entertainment, working to integrate..." Let me read that again. First, we are deepening our integration with Sony Interactive Entertainment, working to integrate 155 of our roles, roughly 12%, into SIE over the next few quarters. SIE has worked tirelessly with us to identify roles for as many of our people as possible, enabling us to save a great deal of talent that would otherwise have been affected by the reduction in force. The letter also announced that the studio was working on a new sci-fi action game within PlayStation Studios. Second, we are working with PlayStation Studios leadership to spin out one of our incubation projects, an action game set in a brand new science fantasy universe, to form a new studio with PlayStation Studios to continue its promising development. For everyone affected by this job reduction, we will be offering a generous exit package, including severance bonus and healthcare coverage. The letter concluded by reassuring fans that its planned marathon reboot is still in development and that over 800 developers are still working on it and the Destiny franchise. There's that. And now people are calling for the resignation of CEO Pete Parsons. People are pissed. People are pissed. This is not the first time that Bungie has had cuts, right? This is not the first time. And Bungie employees are furious. Fans of Destiny are furious. Everybody is incredibly upset by these new. And I'm not trying to like frame this as like worse news than what we saw with Humble or worse news than what we saw at the Embracer Group or any of that. I'm not here. I'm just saying that like something has perhaps struck a chord with this news story more than other news stories of the past. And people have come out just really, really coming for Pete Parsons' head. Like, and you don't often see this, like when Andrew Wilson of EA lays off a bunch of people so he can buy another yacht or whatever the fuck he's doing. Or if Yves Guillemot of Ubisoft, lets go a bunch of people. Like you don't typically see the internet come for these studio heads the way that they have with Pete Parsons, which is surprising to me, because to me it's all the same. If you're gonna get like this upset about one, you should get upset at all of them. But I'm not here to tell people how to spend their emotional energy. I'm here to report on the news. So here's what we have. Following the news, several former Bungie employees took to social media to voice their anger at the decision. A large amount of the backlash was directed at Bungie boss Pete Parsons. We got some tweets, I'm reading angry tweets, which maybe is like the bottom of the barrel when it comes to news, but I still think it's interesting to get these folks' thoughts on all this. Leanna Rupert said on Twitter, "You are a liar, a thief, and so many things we can't discuss publicly. Step down, and without the giant Sony payout, this isn't on Sony. This is squarely on the failure of leadership, plain and simple." Griffin Bennett, a former Destiny community manager, added that Pete is a joke. C-suite taking accountability for any of this, or still just withholding bonuses, and it'll be settled in-house. Poor leadership has crushed one of the greatest developers of all time. Sam Bartley, another former community manager and community coordinator, wrote, "Coward, you did this, you chose this. I'm already listed as do not work with, and I don't care anymore. You lied to my face, straight to it. You also invited me to come see your new cars 2 days before you laid me off. 2 fucking days. Leave now." I guess Pete Parsons also a big fan of cars, a big car collector, which means that he has a lot of money. And I'm not here to tell you whether he deserves that money or whether he earned all that money or if that money could have been better spent elsewhere. But I think you have a pretty good idea of this individual potentially owning a large amount of rare classic cars and then letting people go as part of that. Whether that is something that actually falls on Sony or on him, I'm going to leave up to you to decide for interpretation. But a lot of former Bungie employees are not happy with this whatsoever. Also keep in mind that they had also, the first time around that they cut people, they also reduced a lot of benefits for people at the studio in general. So I don't know what sort of healthcare they're going to provide if the healthcare was ruined prior to this latest round of layoffs. But wait, it gets worse. The video game actors have confirmed a strike action over AI. SAG-AFTRA union had been negotiating with major video game publishers for 18 months. They have now gone on strike as of July 26th. Last September, SAG-AFTRA members approved strike action if the union was unable to get terms it considered acceptable while negotiating the interactive media agreement. SAG-AFTRA had been in negotiations with several video game companies and their performance production arms since October of 2022, including Activision Productions, Blindside, Disney Character Voices, EA Productions, Formosa Interactive, Insomniac Games, Epic Games, Take-Two Productions, VoiceWorks Productions, and Warner Brothers Games. Those companies now likely won't be able to hire unionized actors to perform motion capture or voiceover work for their games. Now, some of the companies listed offer performance services for several game developers and publishers. Blind Light has contributed performance work to series such as The Elder Scrolls, Halo, Destiny, and Fallout, while Formosa Interactive has worked on Call of Duty games and other profile titles like Death Stranding and God of War. So some of these are like production companies that then hire and then do all this stuff. You know how it is. The gig economy. Although agreements, this is a statement put out by SAG-AFTRA, saying, although agreements have been reached on many issues important to SAG-AFTRA members, the employers refuse to plainly affirm in clear and enforceable language that they will protect all performers covered by this contract in their AI language. President Fran Drescher added, "We're not going to consent to a contract that allows companies to abuse AI to the detriment of our members. Enough is enough. When these companies get serious about offering an agreement our members can live and work with, we'll be here ready to negotiate." Chief negotiator Duncan Crabtree Ireland said, "The video game industry generates billions of dollars in profit annually. The driving force behind that success is the creative people who design and create those games. That includes the SAG-AFTRA members who bring memorable and beloved game characters to life, and they deserve and demand the same fundamental protections as their performers in film, television, streaming, and music." Though I would argue there's maybe not a lot of protections in the music industry. I don't know. I don't know if you know about how that stuff works, but regardless, fair compensation and the right of informed consent for the AI use of their faces, voices, and bodies. Frankly, it's stunning that these video game studios haven't learned anything from the lesson of last year, that our members can and will stand up and demand fair and equitable treatment with the respect to AI, and the public supports us in that. So hey, the interactive media agreement has producers that are part of this, and they're the people that are kind of going against the SAG-AFTRA. Audrey Cooling from that group put out a statement saying, "We are disappointed the union has chosen to walk away when we are so close to a deal, and we remain prepared to resume negotiations. We have already found common ground on 24 out of 25 proposals, including historic wage increases and additional safety provisions. Our offer is directly responsive to SAG-AFTRA's concerns and extends meaningful AI protections that include requiring consent and fair compensation to all employers working under the IMA. These terms are among the strongest in the entertainment industry." Well, if it's 24 out of 25, what is it that they're missing? Probably something super important. Probably something super key, if I had to guess. I shouldn't speculate because I don't even know what their demands are. I can assume, but I'm not going to, necessarily dive too deep into what is going on there. But to me, it seems like, hey, some people are going to work on case by case basis. When the Hollywood actors were on strike, there were other companies that were doing individual deals in order to protect those actors and actresses, but also get work done as well. So there's always a scenario where EA could show up and be like, "Hey, we need to get this game out the door. Whatever you guys want, we'll do it for this individual game, and then we'll go back to fighting after that." They could do that. We'll find out. I've been playing a lot of Call of Duty recently. And I'm not somebody who plays a lot of competitive multiplayer games. I will play a fair bit. I am guilty of it. I feel like every year there's at least one or two games that kind of sink their teeth into me, and I play a whole lot of. And if it's not competitive, it's usually some sort of cooperative thing. Helldivers 2, Destiny, or something like that. But when you play a competitive multiplayer game, whether it's a shooter or something else, there's a lot of things that go into you connecting to that other player across the world, wherever they are, and you playing the game together. I'm talking about matchmaking. I'm not talking about fucking eHarmony or Tinder or Bumble or Hinge or Plenty of Fish, or Facebook dating. I'm talking about matchmaking for video games. Now, a lot of things go into, the factors for what is an appropriate match to make when playing games online with somebody. Connectivity. Are they within, close proximity of each other to have a consistent, online connection? One of the other things that is often factored in is something called skill-based, or the skill level, which leads to a scenario where skill-based matchmaking is a heavy of heavy importance when it comes to people playing together in online games, such as Call of Duty. Now, skill-based matchmaking is kind of a tricky algorithm. It's almost like a secret sauce in that it's there. You can often feel it if you are looking for it, if you stare long enough. But the idea is that it's supposed to complement the experience and just be, it should just be a reinforcing constant thing that is not that noticeable unless you go looking for it. So I'll give you an example. I put about 4 hours into Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 multiplayer. And when I look at my stats, I win about 50% of my matches. And I get almost 1 kill in game before I die to another player in game. About 50% win-loss ratio, which they don't actually even do as a percentage. It's just 1. So it's like 1 is basically 50%, right? 2 would be whatever, right? So if you think of 1 as a 50-50, that's kind of where I'm at after about 4 hours of playing the game. And I get about just under 50% wins and losses, and I get just under 50% kills in game before I die. So when I look at that, I think to myself, wow, that's some pretty even games. That's pretty split. It could have been anybody's game. Now, there have been times where I have been blown out, and competing with other people, right? We just get wrecked. There have been times where I have gone on quite a roll, just shooting fools left and right. There have been times where it's been pretty even, and we managed to pull out the victory from coming from behind. There have been times where they snuck up on us, the opposing team snuck up on us, and we got our shit rocked because they kind of rallied. But the point is that a lot of this is done courtesy of skill-based matchmaking. So when I hit, play team deathmatch, they're not only looking at, okay, he's in, this part of the world and we're matching these people from this part of the world, but they're also looking at the individual skill levels of the team, of the players when they form the teams. A lot of people don't like skill-based matchmaking. A lot of people don't believe in it. Now, one of the reasons why a lot of people don't believe in it because the people that are criticizing skill-based matchmaking are content creators. They're streamers. And it's weird to just rip into streamers and content creators as someone who is literally doing this right now. But those people are the last people you should be listening to when it comes to the development of video games, because they are some of the hardest of hardcore. There are people streaming Call of Duty right now, 3-4 hours a day, multiple times a day, if not every day. With any sort of practice, those people would get good at the game regardless of whether there was skill-based matchmaking or not. The whole 10,000 hours thing or whatever. But if I'm somebody who plays Call of Duty maybe, 2 hours a week, and I'm going up against people who have been streaming the game for the last 4 hours out of in a single day, putting maybe 24 hours into the game a week, I think we know how one-sided that match is going to be. But the reasons content creators don't like it is because they want to perform on stream. They almost want to treat it like it's fucking pro wrestling and it's a squash match. They just want to go in there and, put the camera on and just rip through the opposing team. They just want to get headshots and all these kills and all these flashy moves and show off their sweet Cody Rhodes fucking costume and all of the whatever they have and all this shit. They just want to look good for the camera. But the problem is that as their skills improve in the game will continue to match them up with better and better people until it becomes a more even match. But then all of a sudden they're not, ripping through the opposing team the way they used to because it's now more of a fair fight. And they don't like that. To those people, I say, fuck them. Fuck them. Because they're going to ruin the experience for everybody else if it becomes an uneven game. Now, this doesn't take into account people that are trying to modify the game, cheat at the game, and perform glitches and exploit the game in order to get a better performance. I'm not even talking about those people. I'm just talking about people who put in the raw hours to get better at the game and then get mad when all of a sudden they are having an even match. People have been criticizing Call of Duty about this forever, and this isn't the only game. Actually, it's funny enough, when X Defiant came out, one of the big advertising, things that, X Defiant was focusing on was that it wasn't going to have skill-based matchmaking, though it does for the first little bit, and then they wean you off of it. To me, I'm not saying that skill-based matchmaking is some perfect system. In fact, it's an algorithm that they can constantly tweak, and have tweaked, because Activision just put out a study suggesting that removing skill-based matchmaking led to a drop in players in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. Now, here's the crazy thing, is that they put out like a 25-page study. If you want to read it, it's a research paper. They published it online. You can read it and all that stuff if you want. But basically, earlier on this year, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 had an experiment and it did not inform players. So what they found, or let's actually maybe run into kind of cover what they did first. This is as reported by Video Games Chronicles. As always, shout out to Video Games Chronicles. Usually the game's matchmaking takes a player's previous overall performance, such as kills and deaths, and uses it to match them with players with similar stats in an attempt to make a more competitive match that isn't too easy or too hard. For its experiment, Activision took the North American player base for Modern Warfare 3. For half its players, it ran a deprioritized skill test, which loosened the constraints on skill-based matchmaking, meaning less emphasis was placed on the player's skills when looking for opponents. The other half of the players got the normal skill-based matchmaking algorithm. According to Activision's findings, most of the players in the deprioritized skill test were less likely to come back to the game, while the top 10% of its highest skilled players returned to the game in increased numbers within 2 weeks. When it came to the other 90%, fewer returned to the game than normal. Activision says that this should be a concern for the top 10% too, because as players continue to drop out of the game and the player base gets smaller, the top 10% players become the top 20% players and the top 30% players. Activision put out a quote saying, ultimately, this would result in a worse experience for all players as there will be fewer and fewer players available. It also points out that the experiment only deprioritized skill-based matchmaking rather than completely remove it. So the algorithm was still there. It was still doing a little bit, but it just wasn't as important. Quote, if it were completely removed, we would expect to see the player population erode rapidly in the span of a few months, resulting in a negative outcome for all our players. Activision says it also ran other experiments in which skill-based matchmaking was tightened even more than it currently is. And this had the opposite effect, with the best players more likely to drop out and the bottom 80% more likely to return. This change was not rolled out as a standard approach as we continue to strive for a balance in our approach to matchmaking. Oh, people get so mad when they talk about skill-based matchmaking. Just red in the face to the point that they turn blue. It's wild to see. And I don't necessarily want to get into, the science behind it, because I just don't know. But I think that Activision is, like, I'm just speaking from my personal experience. Put about 4 hours into the game, I'm winning about half of my games. Like, if that's not like exactly what they're trying to go for, I don't know what is. Yeah, there have been times where I've made some stupid mistakes in the game. I zigged when I should have zagged and all that shit. But the point is that if you have someone like me who hasn't played a Call of Duty competitive game since Modern Warfare 1, this results are probably exactly what they're going for. The only thing they probably wished I was doing is spending money in the game, but that's besides the point. But here's the other thing. If people were miserable, if people were unhappy by their performance, if people felt that they were unable to learn the game and get better because they kept getting killed, if they kept losing, they would never learn to improve. You do not learn in sports. You do not learn how to, be better at the game in a blowout match. You just don't. Don't even come at me with stupid bullshit like that, all right? You learn when it's an even match. This is why if you get into something like fighting games, you are better off trying to learn fighting games with people that you know in real life who can sit with you in your living room and play Street Fighter with you until you guys both get better at the game, until you're like, oh, I pulled off this move I didn't know I could do, but you learned how to block it and all that stuff. Like, that's where it's at. I'm not saying that skill-based matchmaking doesn't exist in fighting games. It's just that in a one-on-one scenario, it's maybe the math and the algorithm behind it is a little bit different. But that's that. And again, personally, my experience, I'm a believer in the way that this works. It's probably not perfect, but then again, what is? And here's the other thing, is that if Activision did tighten the skill-based matchmaking algorithm to the point where the best players dropped out and the bottom 80% returned, you would have a scenario where no one was able to take the game seriously. Like, no one would be able to sit there with a competitive chip on their shoulder and feel like they have something to prove and want to make it in esports or whatever the case may be. It would just be, duh, I'm just going to sit here and shoot stuff and it's going to, whatever, who cares? Right? To me, when I lose, I'm like, fuck, I got to get better. Right? But if it didn't matter if I lost anymore because it was so rare, I wouldn't feel like improving either. So to me, I say this is totally fine. And the people that are mad about this are probably the type of people who would want to ruin your experience playing a game like Modern Warfare 3 anyways, as they killed you and killed you and killed you over and over again in your matches, ruining your experience. This is what I suspect anyways. These people are sweaty, these people are gross, and they would want to make your life miserable playing something like Call of Duty if they could. And let's not even forget, the whole business model of Call of Duty is trying to get people to play as much of it as humanly possible. The more you play, potentially the better you're going to feel about your standings, rankings, and performance in the game. And if you feel better about how you're doing in the game, you might be able to spend a little bit of that money, maybe buy a battle pass, maybe buy fucking Rey Mysterio in Call of Duty, or buy the Fallout crossover bundle they're doing or whatever. Spend $40 on whatever, right? If you hate the game and you're miserable and you're depressed or you're whatever, you're not going to spend any money. You're not going to keep playing the game. And Activision is in the business of keeping people playing Call of Duty as much as humanly possible. So if you want to argue that you don't want a game that is so focused on attracting mass market audience, then go play something else. Call of Duty is not for you. I would argue that Call of Duty has never been for you. And if you want to get in on that bullshit where it's nothing but try hard sweat lodges, then go play something like X Defiant. Go play anything else. Yeah, you're going to find out that a lot of games, a vast majority of them, have some form of skill-based matchmaking in them. That's because they want people to have fun. And I know it sounds crazy. I know people get their fucking dicks hard thinking about difficulty options in games. But I'm going to tell you right now, people play video games for a lot of different reasons. And one of the reasons people play video games is to have fun. And the way they're going to have fun might be different than the way that you have fun. But in a democratized system like Call of Duty online multiplayer, they have got to find a way to make it the most fun for the most people. And skill-based matchmaking and the algorithm that they have is how they're going to do it. We got some more news, but we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the podcast. I continue to be GnittWitt. Now, there's been a lot of talk in the games world about people playing the same games all the time, playing the same games over and over again. Yeah, man, for the last 4 years, I did nothing but play fucking Grand Theft Auto Online, or this year, the only thing I played was Helldivers. And I'm not picking on those games and I'm not picking on those people. I have been guilty of it in the past. But there have been some developers kind of going, like developers. I'm not talking like journalists. I'm not talking about influencers. I'm talking about people who make games that essentially want you to play them. People going out there and saying that it's just not healthy. It's not healthy for the industry. I'm not talking about like fucking the, Surgeon's general warning that sitting around and playing Call of Duty all day is not healthy. I'm talking about the industry saying that it's not healthy. So here's the latest in that. The developer of Palworld has says that playing the same game all the time is not healthy for the players or the industry. That their behavior will lead to more short-lived live service games. Interesting. Speaking to the Go Indie YouTube channel, the game's community manager John Buckley, better known to the players as Bucky, responded to claims that Palworld is a dead game because its daily peak concurrent player count is around 60,000 rather than the more than 2 million it hit at launch. Buckley argued that the game was never designed to be played forever and that doing so serves no purpose to players. According to Buckley, if players continue to play the same title, it will enforce the belief among publishers and developers that more live service games are the way forward, diluting the market. Buckley says, quote, "I don't think you need to be pushing yourself to play the same game all the time. It's not healthy for us. It's not healthy for developers. It's not healthy for gamers. It's not healthy for gaming media. And it's not just not healthy. And it's just not healthy for our industry, because the more we push this kind of narrative, the more very large companies are going to say gamers want more live service. And we're just going to get more of these soulless live service games that come out and get shut down 9 to 12 months later because they're not making enough money, and we all lose in that case." Instead, Buckley said players should play a more wider variety of games, especially indie games, to focus more on having fun than committing to a single game like Palworld. "Play all the indies you can," he said. "Spend as much money on indies as you can. Really support the guides who are trying to make games fun. Who cares if there's only 5 people playing it? Just enjoy yourself. Just enjoy games. I don't think it needs to be any more complex than that." This isn't the first time Buckley has responded to discourse about Palworld's dropping player count by encouraging players to broaden their horizon. Back in February, Buckley advised fans to try playing other games while they wait for Palworld content updates, saying a drop in players is entirely fine because Palworld isn't the sort of game designed to regularly give players new content. Quote, "There are so many amazing games out there to play," he said at the time. "You don't need to feel guilty about all hopping from game to game. If you're still playing Pal World, we love you. If you're no longer playing Pal World, we still love you. And we hope you'll come back for round 2 when you're ready. Play lots of games, try different games, and frequently flick through indie libraries to find hidden gems." So to me, he's preaching to the choir. Like I would bang if I was in a position of influence, like the Pal World developers are. I would be out there banging that same drum, without a doubt, right? Like why have something like PlayStation Plus? Why have something like Game Pass or the Nintendo? Well, Nintendo subscription service is a different thing because it's mostly Nintendo games. But why have a service like that if you're not going to check out the games that are available? You know, fire up a game for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Fuck around, I say. Right? You know, I think about Amazon Prime Gaming, right? Them giving away games every month, right? And to be honest, I found a ton of great, cool games that have come my way courtesy of Prime Gaming. I just think it's unfortunate that like one of the big games was one of those generic, boring, fucking live service games that Buckley was already talking about in the form of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. But thank God, the hooks in me did not last very long, so I was able to walk away from it and play other games. And even if I didn't, whatever, it'd be fine. But to me, he's preaching to the choir, like 100%, right? Like as soon as this podcast is over, I'm gonna go play Thank Goodness You're Here, which just came out earlier this morning, Thursday morning. So I got to go check that out. But yeah, like to me, this is what I tell all of my friends, all of my family members, anyone who will listen to me. I'm like, oh, you should check out this game. You should play other games. Like you should be curious. Like it's a more rewarding experience when you fire up games you didn't think you'd like or had never heard of or had been sleeping on or whatever. How many times do I come on this podcast and I'm like, God damn it, I can't believe I slept on this game. I can't believe like fucking Midnight Suns. Midnight Suns is a perfect example. For the most part, I don't give about 99.9. I don't give a shit about 99.9% of turn-based strategy games out there. Could not give a shit. If it's not XCOM Enemy Unknown or Final Fantasy Tactics, I don't give a shit about turn-based strategy games. And that extended to superhero games like Marvel's Midnight Suns. But then I played Marvel's Midnight Suns and I'm like, holy shit, this game is fucking fantastic. Fantastic writing, great characters, engaging combat, tactical combat, made me think, but also was a lot of fun. And I'm over here being like, God damn, maybe I need to play more of these games because I've been missing out. Now, am I going to? I don't know. Maybe I'll fuck around with something else. And Midnight Suns is just one example that I could give where I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe I played this and I liked it. Now, Buckley and the Pal World developers are not saying that every game you play is going to be some sort of revelation like it was to some extent with me and Midnight Suns. But still, there's so much out there to play that you should try to play as many games as possible. Especially, like, I'm not saying spend a bunch of money on games you don't know are good. Get something like PlayStation Plus, right? Get something like Game Pass. If you're trying to make it more economically feasible, do that, right? Fire up an indie game. Fire up some random thing that you find on one of those services. Wait for a game to go on sale. Check out Humble Bundle. Check out Fanatical, whatever. Like, check out these services. Go to your local game store if you got to. Like, do something to check out cool games that you might not have experienced otherwise. Because that's what gets this industry going, is when people play different games. If we all sat around and played Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, if we all sat around and played Helldivers 2 or Pal World or any of these games And I'm not even necessarily picking on them because they're live service. Not all of them are live service. I mean, Helldivers 2 is kind of a live service game. Suicide Squad, definitely a live service game. Power World, not quite. They've made a good argument for why it isn't. But if we all sat around and played those games, fuck, dude, it'd be the most boring year in gaming ever. And I know that if you're listening to this podcast, Buckley is probably preaching to the choir, me, the host of the podcast, who's then going to preach back to you, who is also the choir. But like, tell a friend, man, tell a family member, be like, hey, you checked out these games, they're fucking crazy, they're cool as hell. And I hope that the industry will be a better place for it if we can get a little variety, a little spice in our life. This is the opposite of spicy. Activision and Blizzard are the only things going well for Xbox, because hardware sales of Xbox consoles are down 42%. I didn't know they could get that low. I mean, they've been low. I'm talking like flow rider low. Like I'm talking like Shoddy got low. This is low, okay? But thank God for Activision Blizzard. Maybe that $69 billion deal is starting to pay off in some ways, or at least propping up the other part of the sinking ship that is Xbox. So here's what you need to know. For the 3 months that ended in June 30th, 2024, gaming revenue was up 44% year over year for Microsoft. This is a statement that they put out on Tuesday, which includes the 48 points of net impact from Activision. So without the acquisition, gaming revenue would have actually been down 4% for Microsoft. Think about that. Activision, 48 points contributed to a 44% year-over-year growth in gaming revenue. Without it, Microsoft would have been down 4% in gaming revenue. The Xbox hardware revenue declined 42% year-over-year. But Xbox content and services, which include Xbox Game Pass, was up by 61% this quarter. Again, the majority of this came from Activision Blizzard. Now, speaking during a web call following its earnings release, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella claimed its gaming division has now over 500 million active users across platforms and devices, saying, "Our content pipeline has never been stronger. We previewed a record 30 new titles at our showcase this quarter. 18 of them, such as Call of Duty Black Ops 6, will be available on Game Pass. Game Pass Ultimate subscribers can now stream directly on devices they already have, including, as of last month, Amazon Fire TVs. Finally, we are bringing our IP to new audiences. Fallout made its debut as a TV show on Amazon Prime this quarter. It was the second most watched show on the platform ever, and hours played on Game Pass for Fallout increased nearly 5 times. Earlier this month, Microsoft raised the prices of Xbox Game Pass and announced plans to introduce a new standard subscription tier that doesn't include day one titles. Modern Warfare 3 also became the first Call of Duty game to be added to the subscription service, while Black Ops 6 will be the first Call of Duty title to launch day one when it's released on October 25th, 2024. The first Activision Blizzard game to be added to Microsoft's Game Pass subscription service was Diablo 4 on March 28th. Now, according to the latest sales data from the research firm Circana, Xbox Series consoles are tracking 13% where Xbox One was during the same period of its life cycle in the US market. Microsoft has already confirmed it's working on a new Xbox hardware and claimed it has some exciting stuff coming out in hardware that we're going to share this holiday. I don't know, dude. Like, what do you do to get people to buy an Xbox console? I still believe that you should have kept Game Pass as it was. Don't fucking change anything, and just tell people, look, man, when you go buy an Xbox Series X, You get Call of Duty for free. We'll give you a bundle with Game Pass, whatever, go with God. But instead, they fucked up Game Pass and made it more complicated than ever before. Now, that doesn't stop them from doing a bundle when Call of Duty comes out. I'm almost certain they're going to do some sort of bundle with Game Pass, whatever, right? But what is that? Is that going to sell an Xbox console? I don't know, man. Maybe. It's hard to say. It's hard to say because, like, I start to get a little nervous as someone who enjoys Game Pass. I have ripped into Game Pass. I will continue to criticize Game Pass and Microsoft and Activision until the goddamn cows come home. But that don't stop me from enjoying Game Pass for what it is, even if the service gets a little worse over time. But I start to wonder if, like, you know, what is Xbox going to do, right? How much more can they change about Game Pass to make their business profitable? Because the hardware certainly isn't. The Xbox One, a console notorious for not selling very well, sold better than the Xbox Series X and S. So what does that mean about this current console generation? To me, it looks like a scenario where, well, I don't know if we've ever talked about this. Did you know that roughly 50% of Sony's players, sorry, let me rephrase that. Did you know that roughly 50% of all PlayStation players, people that are actively playing games on PlayStation, are playing them on a PlayStation 4? I'm not talking playing PlayStation 4 games. I'm talking about playing on a PS4. Half of Sony's user base has not moved on to the PS5. I can only imagine a scenario where it's not that much different for Xbox. Though Xbox has made some, harder, drawn more lines in the sand in terms of, Indiana Jones is not going to come to old consoles or whatever. But I mean, Call of Duty is. Destiny is. Fortnite is on Call of Duty. Fortnite is on old consoles. Grand Theft Auto is on old consoles. And unfortunately, despite what the Power World developer says, most people are playing those games. Right? The only game I can think of that recently came out that was not on the old consoles was that EA college football game, which probably sold people consoles because they're like, oh shit, the first time a college football game's come out in 10 years and I have to go buy a new console for it. Well, I should probably go buy a console. So people probably went out and bought PlayStation consoles. Though if they were originally Xbox users, maybe they stuck around with Xbox despite not playing the last couple of consoles. And there they are. Fantastic. Bada bing, bada boom. But almost 50% of PlayStation users are playing on PlayStation 4. What does that tell you about this console generation? To me, this console generation, if nothing else, feels, I'm not saying it is, but this console generation feels like a failure. It feels like a failure to move people on to the latest and greatest. Is that a problem? Is there something wrong with that? And I'm not here to say one way or the other, because a lot of great indie games are going to be available on both. There are a lot of multi-platform games. There are a lot of live service games that are going to be available on all that stuff. But when you think about, oh, I had a PlayStation 2 so I could watch DVDs and play the new Madden, and then I bought a Xbox 360 so I could play the new Madden, and then I bought an Xbox One so I could play the new Madden, and then I bought a Xbox Series X so I could play the new Madden. Like that isn't even happening anymore because these games are on these platforms for so long. Like Madden's still coming out on PlayStation 4. Call of Duty still coming out on PlayStation 4. New games. And I'm going to take a bet right now. So the new Madden's not out yet. New Madden's out, I think, in later this year. Later this month. I want to say Madden's out late August. Anyone want to take a bet if that next year's Madden game is going to come out on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One? Anyone want to take that bet? Because I'm almost guaranteeing you it's coming out on the last generation of consoles. Almost assuredly. FIFA, 1,000,000%. So why would you buy an Xbox Series X? Unless it was for a game that you cannot play anywhere else. Like EA College Football. Like Grand Theft Auto 6. Maybe. But the problem is that this business is so conservative. It is so money driven. It's not a charity. I recognize that. It's all capitalism. It's fine. It is what it is. But it is so focused on squeezing every last dollar out of every last title, out of every last person, out of every last console, that of course they don't care if you're going to buy, Cody Rhodes, spend $25 to get Cody Rhodes in Call of Duty, even if you're going to play it on a PlayStation 4. They don't give a shit. It's all money to them. So if you wonder why hardware is down, it's a lot worse for Xbox, without a doubt. PlayStation 5 sold like hotcakes. But even PlayStation 5 has not convinced almost half of its audience, a potential audience, to move on to the latest console. Something for you to consider as we continue on this console generation. We talk about this at least once a month, and I'm always happy to do so because I'm happy for them. It's one of those scenarios where I don't often rally around oh man, it's so exciting that this big company is out there just making money. But Capcom has said all business segments have outperformed in their latest results, and that the back catalog sales continue to power the publisher's financials. Capcom says it's on track to achieve its earnings forecast for the year, and that all of its business segments outperformed its plan in the most recent quarter. Capcom, you ever see that? You ever watch Dark Knight and then you see that scene where the Joker is just sliding down that big mountain of money? That's probably the people at Capcom right now. It's just that if you look at the money close enough, it's going to have a fucking picture of Leon Kennedy or one of the monsters from Monster Hunter or the cat people from Dragon's Dogma 2 or whatever. But anyways. The Monster Hunter publisher reported its financial results for the 3 months ended in June 30th, 2024, and said that it was on track despite net sales being down 32.5% and operating income down about 46.4%, both being significantly down year over year. And I think one of the reasons for that is because Dragon's Dogma came out earlier this year. Dragon's Dogma, one of the biggest games that Capcom had. Kunitsugami, which just recently came out, also a Game Pass game that was available for free on Game Pass and was a digital game. So it's a scenario where maybe Kunitsugami kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people as well, but seems to be popular enough. Now, the company attributed the year-over-year decline to the release of Street Fighter VI last June and noted that its releases are heavily stacked towards the second half of its financial year, which ended March of 2025. Yes, you think about something like Street Fighter, you think about something like Dragon's Dogma 2. Those games come out in the later half of the financial year, which ends in March 2025. So for Capcom fans, look out between January and March because that's when they're going to put out the games. Now, currently the publisher has confirmed that the Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster is coming out in September, and that Monster Hunter Wilds currently has a loose 2025 release window. Your mom also has a loose 2025 release window. Capcom's arcade operations, which include stores, amusement equipments, which includes slot machines, and other businesses such as events and esports segments were all up during the quarter. Capcom was out there saying during the 3 months that ended in June 30th, 2024, sales in Capcom's core digital content businesses centered on releases of existing titles on additional platforms and catalog sales of major titles released in the previous fiscal year because the launch timing of new titles will be concentrated in the second half of its current fiscal year. Does that make sense? Makes sense to me. They put out stuff at the beginning of the year, the calendar year. The resulting sales volumes were 9.53 million units. So basically Capcom saying that we sold about almost 10 million games, which made solid progress toward achieving the full year target and was in line with plans, though represented a decrease compared to the same period of the fiscal year when Street Fighter 6 was released. Well, duh, Street Fighter 6 is Street Fighter 6. Street Fighter is bigger than any game that Capcom has, with the exception of probably of Monster Hunter, right? If we think about the biggest games that Capcom has, numero uno with a bullet is Monster Hunter, followed by Street Fighter. No, you might argue that you could swap those two. I don't know if I'd listen to that argument. Third is probably Resident Evil, and then fourth at this point is probably Dragon's Dogma. Though I would love to see Capcom put out another Devil May Cry game, if that is an option. Please. I never finished 5. Actually, I should take that back. Don't make a new Devil May Cry game until I played through Devil May Cry 5. I also really want to replay DMC Devil May Cry, but now we're getting off topic. Capcom's latest big title, the acclaimed RPG Dragon's Dogma 2, has now sold 3 million units since its release in March, pushing overall sales of the Dragon's Dogma franchise to over 12 million. Dragon's Dogma was also notably Capcom's first $70 US title. This is a weird one, because if you weren't there when it happened, it's hard to care about it now, which is exactly the problem this developer has found themselves in. But let's try to contextualize this. In 2008, a game called Braid came out. It was a 2D side-scrolling puzzle platforming game, and it was what a lot of people point to as one of the first massive indie game success stories. Like, Braid was a massive game for what's actually a pretty small game. It was a very, very big deal. It would later go on. It originally released in 2008 on Xbox 360, would eventually make its way to PlayStation 3 and Windows PC and all of that stuff. And they recently just put out their 2024 anniversary edition of the game. And that came out to everything. So if you have never played Braid, you can get the Braid Anniversary Edition on Switch, PS4, PS5, Windows, Xbox, all that stuff. And again, I can't stress enough just how big of a deal Braid was. Does Braid still hold up today? I'm not here to say any of that stuff. I don't know. I'm not here to kind of say that. But the creator of Braid, Jonathan Blow, has stated that the Braid Anniversary Edition has sold like dog shit. And that's a direct quote from creator Jonathan Blow. So there's a lot to kind of unpack with this. And I'm not even going to try to get into the cult. First of all, if you've never seen the movie Indie Game, I don't know how well it holds up, but you should go watch the movie Indie Game. So it's a fantastic documentary about 3 indie developers that are making 3 separate games and kind of their journeys through that stuff. It's like probably like 15 plus years, like 15 years old now, if I had to guess. But so a lot of things have changed, but you should still check it out if you want. Anyways, there was a compilation video put together that shows montage clips of Jonathan Blow's Twitch channel, in which he gets progressively more negative about the game's sales as the weeks pass following its release. So basically, Jonathan Blow is the creator of Braid. He has his own developer studio, and he's been streaming himself, talking with people and whatever he's doing on Twitch. But over the last little bit, things have kind of changed with his demeanor and his mood and all that stuff on Twitch. So there's a compilation video you can go watch on YouTube if you don't want to watch his streams, his whole streams. But here's the story. Here's the timeline. 6 days after the game, Braid Anniversary Edition, 6 days after Braid Anniversary Edition launched, Jonathan Blow was unsure how well the game had performed, saying it's a little too early to judge. He went on to say, I'll put it this way, we're definitely not sure. It's not like we sold 1 million copies on day one, which is what you'd expect. It's a remaster, right? So you don't expect it to be like a new game in terms of hype level, but we just have to see where it lands. 34 days after the Anniversary Edition was released, Jonathan Blow was asked by a viewer if the game sold well. He said, no, it sold horribly. He said, well, it depends on what your standards are. If you compare it to nostalgic things like the Jeff Minter game that's on Steam or Atari 50, Braid Anniversary Edition sold much better than all of those, but it still has sold like dog shit compared to what we need to make for the company to survive. He said, the future is uncertain. Let's put it that way. He said, it hasn't been good. 68 days after the release of Braid Anniversary Edition, Jonathan Blow once again was asked if he was happy with the Anniversary Edition sales. He said, no, they've been terrible. They've been utterly terrible. In the final clip of this YouTube video compilation, recorded 74 days after the release, Jonathan Blow was asked by a viewer about Jai, a new programming language he's been working on and plans to release at some point in the future. When asked how many people were working full-time on the compiler for Jai, Jonathan Blow replied, none, because we can't afford to pay anyone because the sales are bad. Critical reception for Braid Anniversary Edition has been positive, with the PS5 and Xbox Series X and S versions of the game receiving an 86 and a 92 on Metacritic respectively. That is pretty damn good. But I have not played Braid in a very, very, very long time. I have not thought about Braid in a very, very long time. Despite how big of a deal that game was when it originally came out, despite how big of an influence that game was, I haven't thought about Braid. Can you blame me? I'm not here to tell you one way or the other if you can blame me or not for not thinking about Braid. But the sales have not been super hot for Braid. That's what I can tell you. And then it's up to you to decide if you think that going back to that game is worth it or not. I mean, it's still that game. It still has that art style. It still has all that puzzle and all that stuff to it. But I just wonder if they overthought this. Like, I'm not here to criticize. I mean, Jonathan Blow seems like a guy with his particular ego or whatever. But I'm just wondering if they seriously overthought Braid in general. I don't know. It remains to be seen. But at this point, after nearly, 90 days or whatever, like 3 months of the game being released, if the sales have tanked, I don't think there's much they can do to improve it. Also, the other thing that people don't understand, and maybe Jonathan Blow doesn't understand this either, is that indie gaming has changed tenfold since the release of Braid in 2008. We were just talking about Humble Games, and the loss of Humble Games, and how these games now more than ever need a lot of marketing. They need a lot of support to get out the door and to attract an audience, right? I don't think saying, hey, Braid Anniversary Edition's out is good enough anymore. You need a lot more than that. Maybe you need influencers. Maybe you need streamers. Maybe you need ads on social media. I don't know where, but you need something. And I don't know if Braid Anniversary Edition had that, but if they did, it certainly didn't go well for them. And then I just want to quickly say this. They do great work. Video Games Chronicles is now on Patreon. If you would like to subscribe monthly to support Video Games Chronicles and all that they do, I rely on them. They're like one of the only video game news sites that I want to read and learn about. You can go on to Patreon and you can support Video Games Chronicles if you want. They'll give you some extra perks and bonuses and all that stuff if you want to check them out. But yeah, just want to give a shout out to Video Games Chronicles. They are now on Patreon and you can go directly support them if you would like. I feel like I really covered a lot of what I had to say about Call of Duty, but I'll just say that I've continued to enjoy my time playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. I don't know how much more of it I'll play. Like, I feel like any moment I could be like, okay, I got my fill. I want to move on to something else. Still playing, still trucking along in Mass Effect 1. I'm about 9 hours or so into Mass Effect 1. I've been keeping track of my time played in Mass Effect 1 a little more closely because I thought that game was going to be a lot longer than I actually think it's going to be. I have done almost damn near every side quest that I can, except for any of the collectible stuff. Like, I'm not running around trying to find the keepers in the Citadel, and I'm not trying to find all the dog tags or whatever bullshit. But if there's a side quest and I know it's going to have story content in it and choices I can make and all that stuff, yeah, I'll show up, right? But I was looking at howlongtobeat.com, and it seems like even if you like 100%ed everything in Mass Effect, it would only be like a 30-hour game from what I can tell. And maybe that's assuming that you know what you're doing and you don't run into any, you don't get snagged along the way. But I'm very curious to see, how long it's going to take me to beat Mass Effect 1, because I am almost at the point where if I were to have just mainlined the game, I would have been done the story by now, and then I can move on to Mass Effect 2. The other thing that is kind of got me wondering if I should just wrap up the story quickly is I really want to play Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 2 is a much, much, much better game than Mass Effect 1. Mass Effect 1 holds up pretty well, all things considered, especially with the Legendary Edition changes that they've made. But man, let me tell you, I want nothing more than to play Mass Effect 2 the more I play Mass Effect 1. But there are other games I need to be playing. Today, August 1st, we saw the release of Thank Goodness You're Here, the new game by Cole Supper. I have picked up that game. I have had a chance to download it, but I've not had a chance to play it. My understanding is that it's a pretty short game, like maybe 3 hours. So that is a game that I will definitely have wrapped up for you to talk about to next week when the game, when I've had a chance to play it, is basically kind of what I'm thinking. I can't imagine I will be caught in some scenario where I can't wrap up Thank Goodness You're Here by this time next week. I'll probably keep chipping away at Call of Duty, trying to unlock more things in that game, and I'm probably going to be chipping away at Mass Effect as well. But in terms of new games that I've been playing that I'm really looking forward to, definitely want to play through Thank Goodness You're Here. But like I said, it came out early this morning. I have not had a chance to play it at all. Other than that, that Star Wars Bounty Hunter update came out. That's the remastered version of that game. I don't know how well that game has performed. But we'll see. We shall see. I'm kind of just looking at Steam. Oh yeah, the Tomba Special Edition came out. Though really, I don't think I'm going to bother with Tomba because I don't want to pay $27 for a PlayStation 1 game that I can play on my PC. That doesn't seem like something that's necessarily worth my time. Is there anything else? Just checking out Steam now. Oh, Home Safety Hotline I still need to get to at some point. Okay. That's all really I have to say, is that this has been episode 105 of Glitch Report. We're going to work on some new logos, some new artwork for the podcast and all that stuff. Very minor under the hood stuff that I'm working on. that you'll probably be able to see maybe next week, maybe the week after. We'll see. But that's going to do it for Glitch Report. I have been GnittWitt. You can find everything that I do over at my Linktree, linktree.com/GnittWitt, GnittWitt. Gonna probably still focus on just really being on Blue Sky, Instagram Threads, regular Instagram, and TikTok for the most part. So those are going to be the best places you can find me. I don't know if I'll keep going with the YouTube streaming. I might go back to Twitch. You'll know by the time you listen to next week's podcast if I'm sticking with YouTube or I'm going to go back to Twitch. But that's going to do it for the podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out, chatting. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all next week. Take it easy.